Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend, prize-winning recitalist and wonderful reciter. We are in for a treat. Let's hear it for Auriol Britton.
Good afternoon. Robert Frost was born on the 26th of March, 1874, in San Francisco, California. His father was a teacher and journalist, and his mother was a Scottish immigrant. Following the death of his father when Frost was aged just 11, in 1885, leaving the family with $8, Frost moved with his sister Jeannie and his mother to Lawrence, Massachusetts. They moved in with grandparents. Frost left Lawrence High School in 1892, where he had published his first poem in a school magazine and served as class poet. His mother joined the Swedenborgian Church, into which he was baptized, but he left as an adult. Frost attended Dartmouth College for a few months before returning home, where he helped his mother to teach a class of unruly boys, as well as working delivering newspapers and in a factory maintaining carbon arc lamps. He did not enjoy these jobs, feeling that his calling was to write poetry. On the 8th of November, 1894, Frost published his poem, My Butterfly, an elegy, in The Independent of New York for $15, which would now be worth $528. He had a book of 6 poems privately printed and also had 2 poems, The Tuft of Flowers and Trial by Existence, published in 1906. But in the first 38 years of his life, he had only 13 poems published, it being hard to find a publisher. Frost married his childhood sweetheart, Eleanor Miriam White, on the 19th of December, 1895. She had originally declined so that she could focus on her studies, and Frost, being prone to depressiveness, had gone on an excursion to the Great Dismal Swamp, Virginia, but he had asked again and she had agreed. They would go on to have 6 children, only 2 of whom would survive their father. Frost attended Harvard from 1897 to 99, but left voluntarily due to ill health. In 1900, his mother died when Frost was aged 26. That year, his grandfather bought a farm for the couple and their children in Derry, New Hampshire. Robert and Eleanor worked the farm for 12 years, he writing early in the morning many of the poems for which he would become famous. However, agricultural endeavour, including poultry farming, proved unsuccessful, and from 1906 to 1911, Frost worked as an English teacher at Pinkerton Academy, then went on to Plymouth State University. In 1912, Frost brought the family to England. They lived in Beaconsfield, Buckinghamshire. He hoped that here more publishers would be willing to take a chance on a new poet. Sure enough, his first collection, A Boy's Will, came out in 1913, followed by North of Boston, 1914. Frost acquainted himself with various poets, including Ezra Pound and Edward Thomas, who became the inspiration behind The Road Not Taken, which we will hear shortly. Although Frost had grown up in a city, he became most closely associated with poems set in rural scenery. They returned to the United States in 1915, following the outbreak of World War I, and Frost burst onto the literary scene. His new publisher, Holt, who remained with Frost for the rest of his life, published Mountain Interval in 1916, a collection of works created in England. Journals such as Atlantic Monthly, which had turned Frost down, now came calling. He famously sent them the same poems which they had previously rejected. Over the years, Frost would give recitations of his work to eager crowds. And hopefully we've got one of those here today. Right. On returning to the US, Frost bought a farm in Franconia, New Hampshire, from where he launched a career in writing, teaching, and lecturing. The farm is now maintained as the Frost Place, a museum and poetry conference centre. From 1917 to 20, Frost taught English at Amherst College, Massachusetts, where he called his colloquial approach to language the sound of sense. From 1921 to 62, Frost spent the summers and autumns teaching at the Breadloaf School of English, Middlebury College, Ripton, Vermont, where he was a major influence on the curriculum. From 1921 to 27, Frost had a fellowship at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Frost was awarded a lifetime appointment at Michigan as a Fellow of Letters. The Robert Frost Ann Arbor home is run by the Henry Ford Museum at their Green Village site. Throughout the 1920s, Frost also lived in his colonial-era house, Shaftesbury, now the Frost Stone House Museum. From 1923 to 25, Frost was teaching back at Amherst College. The main library there is named in his honour. In 1923, Frost won the first of 4 Pulitzer Prizes for New Hampshire, a poem with notes and grace notes. He was more informally connected with Amherst from 1926 to 38. West Running Brook, a book in 6 sections, was published in 1928. There were Pulitzer Prizes for Collected Poems, 1930, and A Further Range, 1936. In 1934, Frost began spending the winters in Florida, and in 1935 gave a lecture at the University of Miami. Frost's wife passed away in 1938. In 1940, he bought a 5-acre plot in South Miami, naming it Pencil Pines. He had never made a penny from anything which did not involve the use of a pencil. Frost also had a house in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I must say, if there's one thing that doesn't necessarily endear me to Frost, it's this buying up of property everywhere. And to many of us nowadays, that would seem, one house, a chance of one house would be a fine thing. I think many of us will be renting our whole lives. Anyway, I think, I'm not quite convinced that he really needed all those houses, but still, we'll press on. His last Pulitzer Prize came in 1942 with A Witness Tree. Frost received 40 honorary degrees. On Frost's 75th birthday, the United States Senate passed a resolution in his honor, crediting his poems with guiding American thought, humor, and wisdom. In 1955, Vermont named a mountain after him. On the 20th of January 1961, Frost performed The Gift outright from memory, aged 86, at the inauguration of President John F. Kennedy. He attempted to read Dedication, composed for the occasion, but could not see the print in the strong sunlight. In the summer of '62, Frost accompanied the Interior Secretary, Stuart Udall, on a visit to the USSR in hopes of meeting President Khrushchev and lobbying for peace between the two Cold War powers. On the 29th of January 1963, Frost died at the Peter Bent Bryam Hospital, Boston, aged 88, from complications following prostate surgery. He is buried in the Old Bennington Cemetery, Vermont. His epitaph is from one of his poems, The Lesson for Today, 1942. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. Frost could sum up life and all that he had learned from it in 3 words. It goes on. In 1974, Frost appeared on a 10-cent stamp. He was nominated for the Nobel Literature Prize 3 times. Some of his work has been published posthumously. In 1906, a poem was discovered, dated 1918, entitled War Thoughts at Home. His collected poems came out in 1910 to critical acclaim, and collections of notebooks and letters have also been published. Frost deployed traditional poetic forms in the face of the American trend towards free verse, which he said was like trying to play tennis without a net. I have to say I'm inclined to agree with him. The few poems I wrote as a child, interestingly, it came naturally to me if I wrote a poem, to do a rhyming poem that had some kind of meter or rhythm when I was a child. I had a big foray into free verse in my early adulthood, but have since reverted to more structured poetic forms. Helen H. Bacon proposed that his education in Greek and Roman classics at Lawrence, Dartmouth, and Harvard influenced the poems. She mentions 2 particularly, Birches and Wild Grapes, and links the imagery in them with Euripides' Bacchae. His work raises fundamental questions of existence, depicting with chilling starkness the loneliness of the individual in an inherently indifferent universe. Lighthouser notes that the Frost behind the genial, homespun New England rustic was desperate, frightened, and brave, and that has become the Frost we've all learned to recognize. Robert Frost was America's unofficial poet laureate and a quintessentially American poet of high renown. Well, I've got lots of his poems here to share with you today, and we're going to start with that poem inspired by Edward Thomas, The Road Not Taken. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. I think there are plenty of us, aren't there, in this life who sort of think we have taken, the road less travelled, but in fact follow the expected or the conventional path. Meeting and passing is my next choice, and it goes like this. As I went down the hill along the wall, there was a gate I had leaned at for the view, and had just turned from when I first saw you as you came up the hill. We met. But all we did that day was to mingle great and small footprints in summer dust, as if we drew the figure of our being less than 2, but more than 1 as yet. Your parasol pointed the decimal off with one deep thrust. And all the time we talked, you seemed to see something down there to smile at in the dust. Oh, it was without prejudice to me. Afterward, I went past what you had passed, and afterwards, I went past what you had passed before we met, and you, what I had passed. I'm sorry if I didn't quite do that one justice. What I like about Frost is these sort of observations, these wry observations about little everyday things that happen in life and how he sees them slightly differently. Now, my next choice requires no introduction, and it is, of course, stopping by woods on a snowy evening, and I'm going to tell you something about it afterwards. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Thank you. Now, according to J. McBride Dabbs, this poem conveys the insistent whisper of death at the heart of life. Now, I must say I hadn't really appreciated that, because I'm not a great literary scholar. However, this poem is special to me because where it mentions in verse 2, the darkest evening of the year, and the way he pauses. If you were to interpret that as the longest evening of the year, there are some of us, myself included, who always pause on the longest evening of the year to reflect and remember and pray for peace, for reasons which Robert Frost could never have imagined and would never have known about, because they were after his time. They were after his time, but yes, there are some of us pause ourselves on that evening of the year, and thank you for letting me say that. So this is, I'm sorry if I wandered a bit off the microphone now. This is a boundless moment. He halted in the wind, and what was that? Far in the maples, pale but not a ghost. He stood there bringing March against his thought, and yet too ready to believe the most. "Oh, that's the paradise in bloom," I said. And truly, it was fair enough for flowers, had we but in us to assume in March such white luxuriance of May for ours. We stood a moment, so in a strange world, myself as one his own pretense deceives. And then I said the truth, and we moved on, a young beech clinging to its last year's leaves. So now we're going to hear On a Tree Fallen Across the Road, and it's subtitled To Hear Us Talk. And this is a sonnet, and I'm going to let you decide whether it's a Shakespearean or a Petrarchan one, and that's something you can no doubt discuss in the literary conversations over lunch later. This is On a Tree Falling Across the Road. The tree the tempest with a crash of wood throws down in front of us is not to bar our passage to our journey's end for good, but just to ask us who we think we are, insisting always on our own way so. She likes to halt us in our runner tracks and make us get down in a foot of snow, debating what to do without an axe. And yet she knows obstruction is in vain. We will not be put off the final goal, we have it hidden in us to attain. Not though we have to seize earth by the pole. And tired of aimless circling in one place, steer straight off after something into space. Some very short poems now. This is entitled Waspish. On glossy wires artistically bent, he draws himself up to his full extent. His natty wings with self-assurance perk, his stinging quarters menacingly work. Poor egotist, he has no way of knowing, but he's as good as anybody going. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this one is entitled Not All There. And it is, well, Frost seems as though he likes to keep his prayers light-hearted, but I'll tell you something else about it when you've heard Not All There. I turned to speak to God about the world's despair, but to make bad matters worse, I found God wasn't there. God turned to speak to me. Don't anybody laugh. God found I wasn't there. At least, not over half. He sort of he likes to keep his prayers profound, but doesn't like them to get too heavy going. And that's part of the charm of Frost. Some of it seems more light-hearted than it actually is. He doesn't like to kind of wallow in the thing. Anyway, this is an epigram. Now, an epigram is a sort of witty or clever poetic thought. We had, you will remember from the recital a couple of years ago, which no doubt you all remember word for word, then it was peppered with a number of epigrams. So this is a famous poem. Again, this is Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favour fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So this is on looking up by chance at the constellations. You'll wait a long, long time for anything much to happen in heaven beyond the floats of clouds and the northern lights that run like tingling nerves. The sun and moon get crossed, but they never touch, nor strike out fire from each other, nor crash out loud. The planets seem to interfere in their curves, but nothing ever happens. No harm is done. We may as well go patiently on with our life and look elsewhere than to stars and moon and sun for the shocks and changes we need to keep us sane. It is true, the longest drought will end in rain. The longest peace in China will end in strife. Still, it wouldn't reward the watchers as stay awake in hopes of seeing the calm of heaven break on his particular time and personal sight. That calm seems certainly safe to last tonight. So he kind of ends with a sort of space forecast. Now, to be fair, if the sun and moon did ever touch and strike out fire, I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, we wouldn't be here to know about it. And things do happen in space. As a person who regards her expertise as being born of a little research, I'm writing a book set partly in space, don't forget. Things do happen, you just have to be patient, as in a few million years patient, to be fair. This is the Valley's singing day. The sound of the closing outside door was all. You made no sound in the grass with your footfall, as far as you went from the door, which was not far. But you had awakened under the morning star, the first songbird that awakened all the rest. He could have slept but a moment more at best. Already determined dawn began to lay in place across a cloud the slender ray, for prying beneath the lids, for prying beneath and forcing the lids of sight, and loosing the pent-up music of overnight. But dawn was not to begin there, pearly, by which I mean the rain is pearls so early before it changes to diamonds in the sun. Neither was song that day to be self-begun. You had begun it, and if there needed proof, I was asleep still under the dripping roof, my window curtain hung over the sill to wet. But I should awake to confirm your story yet. I should be willing to say, and help you say, that once you had opened the valley's singing day. Well, I'm not sure there was anything pearly about the rain squalling down this morning. I don't think there was anything of pearls falling early or turning to diamonds in the sun about it, but I'm impressed with you all for getting here. Anyway, thank you very much. This is Reluctance. Out through the fields and the woods and over the walls I have wended. I have climbed the hills of view and looked at the world and descended. I have come by the highway home, and lo, it is ended. The leaves are all dead on the ground, save those that the oak is keeping. To ravel them one by one, and let them go scraping and creeping over the crusted snow when others are sleeping. And the dead leaves lie huddled and still, no longer blown hither and thither. The last lone aster is gone, the flowers of the witch hazel wither. The heart is still aching to seek, but the feet question whither? Ah, when to the heart of man was it ever less than a treason to go with the drift of things, to yield with a grace to reason, and bow and accept the end of a love or a season? It is Blue Butterfly Day here in spring, and with these sky flakes down in flurry on flurry, there is more unmixed colour on the wing than flowers will show for days, unless they hurry. But these are flowers that fly and all but sing. And now, from having ridden out desire, they lie closed over in the wind and cling where wheels have lately sliced the April mire. That was entitled Blue Butterfly Day. I hope I'm giving you a reasonable representation of frost here. We're getting through this, we're nearly at the end actually. This is desert places, and I think this sort of shows Robert Frost's desolate side. Snow falling and night falling fast, oh fast. In a field I looked into going past, and the ground almost covered smooth in snow, but a few weeds and stubble showing last. The woods around have it. It is theirs. All animals are smothered in their lairs. I am too absent-spirited to count. The loneliness includes me unawares. And lonely as it is, That loneliness will be more lonely ere it will be less, a blanker whiteness of benighted snow, with no expression, nothing to express. They cannot scare me with their empty spaces between stars, on stars where no human race is. I have it in me so much nearer home to scare myself with my own desert places. Thank you for that. So this is The Gift Outright, and this is the one that Frost performed at the inauguration of John F. Kennedy. The land was ours before we were the land's. She was our land more than 100 years before we were her people. She was ours in Massachusetts, in Virginia. But we were England's, still colonials, possessing what we still were unpossessed by, possessed by what we now no more possessed. Something we were withholding made us weak, until we found out that it was ourselves we were withholding from our land of living, and forthwith found salvation in surrender. Such as we were, we gave ourselves outright, the deed of gift in many deeds of war, to the land vaguely realizing westward, but still unstoried, artless, unenhanced, such as she was, such as she would become. Apart from it striking me that that poem must be particularly hard to memorize with these possessing, possessed, etc., and the lines being kind of so similar and so different, you can see how his deep kind of love of America and how deeply American Frost is that, and his love of his country in that piece. This is called Astro-Metaphysical. It's the third from the end today. And again, here, he likes to keep his prayers from getting too heavy, but they are nonetheless profound. This is astro-metaphysical. Lord, I have loved your sky, be it said against or for me, have loved it clear and high, or low and stormy, till I have reeled and stumbled from looking up too much, and fallen and been humbled to wear a crutch. My love for every heaven over which you, Lord, have lorded, from number 1 to 7, should be rewarded. It may not give me hope that when I am translated, my scalp will in the cope be constellated. But if that seems to tend to my undue renown, at least it ought to send me up, not down. So my penultimate choice is entitled A Cliff Dwelling. There sandy seems the golden sky, and golden seems the sandy plain. No habitation meets the eye, unless in the horizontal rim. Some halfway up the limestone wall, That spot of black is not a stain or shadow, but a cavern hole, where someone used to climb and crawl to rest from his besetting fears. I see the callus on his soul, the disappearing last of him and of his race, starvation slim. Oh, years ago, 10,000 years. Well, if I were a person of a vivid imagination, which of course I am, I would sort of think he was looking back to childhood in that. I don't know what anybody else thinks. Again, that could be a literary talking point over lunch. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we draw another poetry recital to a close, I do believe this might be the 16th one, and they are still just as nerve-wracking, and every year they seem to involve more work than the last one. I would like to say thank you again all so much for coming here today. I'd like to thank David Moat for organising concerts. I'd like to thank the printers and the poster designer, and the Minuteman Press and John Bone, even though they are not here in person today. I'd like to thank Mark and the church for having the lunchtime concerts here, and I'd like to thank Rodri for filming this and putting on YouTube. But above all, thank you to you all for attending in person, because without you, these events would not be happening. There is a retiring collection to keep the lunchtime concerts going. Please do dig deep for that. If you're watching this at a later date, you could maybe send in some money to St. Stephen's Church. You'll find it on the internet in all the usual place where it is. As David rightly said, most of the musicians, this is more the music of poetry. We'll have expenses in the church, we'll have something, and the organiser will have something. I choose not to take anything, and that's my choice, and I'm very happy to do that. Although, sadly, because of changes in my life, I'm not going to be able to do very much spoken word kind of acting and drama unpaid anymore. I'm committed to keeping poetry recitals going, so they will keep going as they are. At the back, I have left a copy of my latest poetic offering. It is entitled, ironically, The Path to Happiness, and it was unleashed into the wild recently. So on the 4th of August 2025, I was having a day, and it was a day when you say to yourself, oh, I've got to do this, this, and this. I had to deal with, the payment card industry compliance, and you have a day when you have to ring up a government department, or something about insurance that's on your mind or whatever. And nobody ever grows up. When they're a child, nobody ever says, when I grow up, I really, really want to do that. I can't wait to be older so I can do that, put the car in for the MOT or whatever it may be. It may reassure you to know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to be putting any cars in for the MOT anytime soon. Or, paying the car tax, or taking the dry cleaning round, or working at the sorting office, or on the buses, or whatever it might be. I'm not sure many people are very keen on working on the buses around here at the minute, but good luck to all who do. So so I thought there must be a poem in this somewhere, and sure enough there was. So I commend to you The Path to Happiness. There are some copies at the back too. Please help yourself and share it far and wide. I've also left some business cards at the back. They are the green and gold business cards for my Poetry Gold Daily Text service. If you don't pick up a business card, by all means just text the word sample to my mobile telephone number, and a sample will at some point come back to you. I have stuff here to sell, which I have done and made. So I have 4 things. I have the Flowers of the Field, a CD of songs, some of them with piano, folk and traditional songs. That is £5. Flowers of the Field, £5. I have Santa's Message, a published short story for £2.50. Santa's Message, £2.50. And if you would like a braille or a large print copy, please get someone to tap me on the shoulder afterwards and say so. I have Christmas cards, The Tree of Life, a pack of 6 for £5, £6, Tree of Life, £5, Tree of Life, 6 cards, and they are a multicoloured Christmas tree on a black background. And please rest assured that when at time of printing, the contribution went to Christian Aid for each pack when they were printed, which was quite a long time ago. And finally, I have Flowers of Hope, single cards for £1 each. If you would like to hear all that again, you can hear it by tuning into last year's poetry recital on YouTube. And there we are. So without further ado, I'm going to leave you this year, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to see you all again next year, and your friends and enemies and everybody else. And this is quintessentially Frost, and it's called The Fear of God. If you should rise from nowhere up to somewhere, from being no one up to being someone, be sure to keep repeating to yourself, you owe it to an arbitrary God, whose mercy to you rather than to others won't bear too critical examination. Stay unassuming. If, for lack of license to wear the uniform of who you are, you should be tempted to make up for it in a subordinating look or tone, beware of coming too much to the surface and using for apparel what was meant to be the curtain of the inmost soul. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Next year, we mentioned him earlier, Edward Thomas. Thank you.